The 1970s were a wild time for rhythm and blues. Soul, funk, and disco ruled the airwaves. Artists were bold, labels were daring, and radio DJs played things that, honestly, should have raised a lot more eyebrows than they did. These weren't novelty songs buried on a B-side. These were real hits. Songs people danced to, cried to, and played at parties without fully realizing what they were actually listening to. Today, we're counting down 10 of the weirdest R&B songs that 1970s kids simply cannot forget. The stories behind these tracks, even stranger than the songs themselves. Let's get into it. Number 10, Band of Gold, Freda Payne, 1970. Here's a song millions of people sang along to, without ever stopping to ask, wait, what exactly happened on that honeymoon night? Band of Gold sounds like a classic soul breakup anthem. Beautiful production, irresistible groove, instant hit. But then you actually listen to the lyrics. The song is about a woman who married a man, and on their wedding night, they slept in separate rooms. He left the very next morning. All she's got left is the ring on her finger and the hollow memory of a marriage that never actually happened. The Holland Dozier Holland team wrote it under a fake name, the pseudonym Edith Wayne, because they were in a legal battle with Motown. The song's meaning was left deliberately ambiguous. Critics immediately started debating whether the husband was impotent or gay and simply unable to go through with the night. Freda Payne did not want to record it. She thought the material was better suited for a teenager. Co-writer Ron Dunbar told her, quote, "You don't have to like it, just sing it." She did. It hit number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100, 6 consecutive weeks at number 1 in the UK, and that unforgettable guitar riff, played by a teenage Ray Parker Jr., years before anyone knew his name. Number 9, Don't Worry. If there's a hell below, we're all going to go. Curtis Mayfield, 1970. Now that is a title. Curtis Mayfield spent the 1960s as the gentle genius of soul, writing uplifting anthems about hope and civil rights with the Impressions. America loved him for it. Then in 1970, he went solo, and his very first single as a solo artist opened with a woman screaming Bible scripture over a fuzz bass. Followed immediately by Curtis himself, shouting into a massive echo overdub, "Don't worry, if there's a hell below, we're all gonna go." Then a blood-curdling scream. This was not what anyone expected from the gentle genius. Over at Motown, Berry Gordy was refusing to let Marvin Gaye make political music at this exact same time. He thought it was commercial suicide. Meanwhile, Curtis Mayfield walked into his own studio on his own label and dropped the darkest debut single imaginable. Radio played it. People bought it. It charted. His own musicians reportedly told him, quote, "Gosh, this is a terribly strange key to play in." Mayfield had no formal training. He wrote in an open tuning that trained session players found nearly impossible. He just wrote what he felt. And what he felt in 1970 was apparently the end of the world. Kanye West later sampled the intro for Jesus Walks because some warnings never go out of style. Listen, 90% of you watching these videos right now ain't subscribed yet. If these stories are blowing your mind, imagine what you're missing. Hit subscribe, turn on that bell, and join the R&B fans who never miss a Groove Lens upload. Number 8, Mercy, Mercy Me, The Ecology. Marvin Gaye, 1971. Marvin Gaye, the Prince of Motown, the voice of romance and desire. Ain't No Mountain High Enough, songs that made everybody feel warm and alive. Then in 1971, Marvin Gaye wrote an R&B song about pollution. Not vague pollution. He wrote about radiation underground, mercury in the fish, oil across the oceans, poison blowing in the wind, and he subtitled it. Sit with this. Mercy, Mercy Me, The Ecology. The Ecology. He subtitled an R&B ballad, The Ecology, in 1971. On Motown Records, Berry Gordy reportedly called the entire What's Going On album, quote, the worst thing I've ever heard. He refused to release it. Marvin Gaye refused to record anything else until Gordy relented. The first single sold 100,000 copies on its first day. Gordy backed down completely. Mercy, Mercy Me followed as the second single and hit #1 on the R&B chart for 2 weeks. It was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2002. Critic Nelson George later asked, quote, who the hell was writing songs about the ecology? The answer was nobody. That was the point. Marvin Gaye got there first, and he did it on Motown Records with a song that his own label called Unreleasable. Number 7, Family Affair. Sly and the Family Stone, 1971. The band was called Sly and the Family Stone. Their biggest hit ever was called Family Affair. But by the time they recorded it, there was no family. And it was not the kind of affair anyone wanted to be part of.
Sing the song with us. It's a family affair.
Sly Stone had spent 1970 in complete freefall. Drug addiction, canceled shows, mounting lawsuits, actual gangsters working as his bodyguards.
This is my uncle.
He recorded the entire album, including Family Affair, largely alone in a recreational vehicle, parked outside his house, overdubbing layer after layer onto deteriorating tape until the whole thing sounded underwater. The Family Stone on this record is basically Sly, his sister Rose, who he woke up in the middle of the night for her vocal, and a drum machine, because the actual drummer had already quit. Rose later said she recorded her part half asleep, thinking, quote, we'll do it right tomorrow. There was no tomorrow. That one sleepy take is what you hear on the record. This dark, murky document of a man and a band falling apart hit #1 on both the Billboard Hot 100 and the R&B chart in November 1971. People danced to it at parties. They still do today, completely unaware the man who made it was alone in a camper van, slowly losing everything.
A year ago, and you still checking.
Number 6, Theme from Shaft, Isaac Hayes, 1971. Isaac Hayes walked into the 1972 Academy Awards wearing a chainmail vest. Chainmail? At the Oscars. And he was there because Theme from Shaft had just won Best Original Song, making Hayes the first African American to win an Academy Award in a non-acting category in the history of the ceremony. The song had already hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The soundtrack knocked John Lennon's Imagine off the top of the pop album chart. 2 Grammys, 1 Oscar, and the most jaw-dropping detail, he almost never scored the film at all. Hayes agreed to write the music only after being promised an audition for the lead role of Shaft himself. The producers cast Richard Roundtree instead and never even called Hayes. He could have walked away furious. Instead, he went into the studio and built one of the most iconic openings in music history, that whispering hi-hat, the wah-wah guitar, the horns, narrating with the authority of a man who absolutely did get the part. When the Academy considered his nomination, they tried to disqualify him. He couldn't read traditional music notation, so was it really his composition? Quincy Jones personally intervened and argued his case. Hayes won. He dedicated the Oscar to his grandmother, who joined him on stage. The most glamorous man in a chainmail vest, winning an award he almost wasn't allowed to receive for a role he never got to audition for. #5, Across 110th Street, Bobby Womack, 1972. 110th Street in Manhattan is a real street. In 1972, it was the literal dividing line between Harlem and the rest of New York City.
Trying to break out of the ghetto was a day-to-day.
Below it, comfort and wealth. Above it, a world mainstream America mostly looked away from. Bobby Womack wrote this song for the crime film of the same name, and unlike most movie themes of the era, it doesn't glamorize a single thing. The opening lyric drops immediately. I was the third brother of 5, doing whatever I had to do to survive. That wasn't fiction.
110th Street,
Womack grew up in Cleveland, so poor his family reportedly foraged through supermarket dumpsters for food. He wrote from the inside, not from a distance. The song casts nobody as a villain, just people in an impossible situation.
Running that coke, shooting that dope, man, you're copping out.
Pimps trying to catch a woman that's weak. Pushers won't let the junkie go free. No redemption arc, no easy moral, just cold truth over a soul groove.
Take my advice, it's either live.
It got moderate play in 1973. Then Quentin Tarantino opened Jackie Brown with it in 1997. Ridley Scott used it in American Gangster, The Sopranos, Breaking Bad.
Never die, you got to be strong.
It has appeared in more films and shows than most #1 hits of that entire decade. What most people don't know,
10th Street, trying to catch you.
Womack wrote it while his mentor Sam Cooke was freshly murdered, his own marriage was collapsing, and addiction was closing in. He wrote what he knew, and it outlasted everything.
The family on the other.
#4, Lady Marmalade, LaBelle, 1974. 3 women walk on stage at the Metropolitan Opera House, wearing silver platform boots, feathered headdresses, and skin-tight silver space costumes. The year is 1974. The group is La Belle. They are the first black pop group to ever perform at the Met. And the song they're about to sing, their lead singer does not fully understand. Lady Marmalade is about a Creole sex worker in the French Quarter of New Orleans. The chorus, "Voulez-vous coucher avec moi ce soir?" is a direct French proposition that means, "Do you want to sleep with me tonight?" Patti LaBelle had no idea. She later told reporters, quote, "I swear I had no idea what it meant until I asked the writer. He told me. I said, 'Oh gosh, what will my mother think?'" It gets better. A group of nuns heard it on the radio, didn't speak French, and called to praise La Belle for their uplifting music. When someone translated the chorus for them, they called the group bad people. TV censors forced the French from "sleep with me" to "dance with me." The song hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 anyway. The Grammy Hall of Fame inducted it in 2003. The Library of Congress added it to the National Recording Registry in 2021. A song about a New Orleans sex worker that its own singer didn't understand, performed in space costumes at the Opera House. That is 1970s R&B. Number 3, "Lovin' You," Minnie Riperton, 1974.
And making love with you.
The most delicate #1 hit of the 1970s was never supposed to be recorded. It started as an actual lullaby, written by Minnie Riperton and her husband Richard Rudolph to get their baby daughter to sleep at night. That daughter was Maya Rudolph. Yes, that Maya Rudolph, the Saturday Night Live star. The baby this song was written for. In the full album version, not the radio edit, right near the end, you can hear Minnie softly singing "Maya, Maya, Maya" before the song fades. Radio DJs cut that part, thinking listeners would misunderstand it as a religious chant. Most people who fell in love with this song never heard its most personal moment. Stevie Wonder co-produced the record, but because he was under Motown contract, his name couldn't appear in the credits. He's listed as El Toro Negro, Black Bull, a reference to his Taurus zodiac sign. The story goes that Wonder asked for their most embarrassing song. They played him the lullaby. He told them to record it exactly as bare and simple as it already was.
I'm more in love with you.
A live bird had been singing through an open studio window during the original take. Stevie loved it so much, he sent the team to UCLA Botanical Garden to record more birds for the track. It hit #1 in April 1975. 9 months later, Minnie Riperton was diagnosed with breast cancer. She died in 1979 at 31 years old. The epitaph on her headstone reads, "Lovin' you is easy, 'cause you're beautiful." The lullaby that was never meant to be recorded became the last words on her grave. Number 2, For the Love of Money, the O'Jays, 1973. You know this song. Even if you think you don't, you know this song. Those first 6 bass notes crawl into your ear and never leave. But here's what nobody talks about. They were created almost entirely by accident. Fall 1973, Sigma Sound Studios, Philadelphia. Bass player Anthony Jackson, 21 years old, has a wah-wah pedal on his Fender Precision bass. Engineer Joe Tarsia had just installed a brand new Eventide phaser and decided on impulse to run the bass through it. The sound that came back was unlike anything in the room. Rich, swishing, sinister, like money itself, seductive and dangerous at the same time. During the final mix, Kenny Gamble impulsively cranked the echo on the opening riff, then immediately cut it back to nothing. That jarring contrast is the sound you hear in the first 3 seconds. The bass line was so essential that Gamble and Huff gave Jackson a co-writing credit, almost unheard of for a session player. The album version runs over 7 minutes. Radio played it anyway. Here's the twist that made the O'Jays wince for decades. The title comes from 1 Timothy, "For the love of money is the root of all evil." It's a warning, a protest song. Eddie Leverett spent years complaining that people had completely inverted its message. Then in 2004, Donald Trump made it the theme for The Apprentice. A Bible verse protest against greed became an anthem for greed, used by a man the writers despised. The O'Jays couldn't have written a more ironic ending if they tried. Number 1, Love to Love You Baby, Donna Summer, 1975. In late 1975, Casablanca Records president Neil Bogart received a tape in the mail. He played it at a party, then played it again and again, all night. When the party ended, he called the producer and said, "Make it longer, 20 minutes. The song was 3 minutes long. It was supposed to be a demo, recorded for another artist to release. The finished version would run nearly 17 minutes. And it would be built almost entirely around the sound of a woman experiencing ecstasy. Donna Summer was the last person anyone expected to make this. Church-raised in Boston. 8 years doing musical theater in Germany. Deeply private, deeply devout. When it came time to record the full extended version, she couldn't perform with engineers watching through the glass. Lights off, curtain drawn. Summer lay on the studio floor in total darkness and imagined herself as Marilyn Monroe playing a character. Time magazine later counted 22 distinct simulated orgasms in the 17-minute track and declared it, quote, sex rock. The BBC refused to air it. Multiple stations banned it outright. It still hit number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. Casablanca flew a life-size cake sculpted in Donna Summer's image across the country on 2 first-class airline seats to celebrate the release. When she performed it live in Italy, 5,000 men nearly rioted and surrounded her trailer. She later said, quote, "I just thought, I'm going to die today." She stopped performing it, became a born-again Christian, distanced herself from it entirely, and yet Love to Love You Baby is now recognized as one of the recordings that invented disco as a genre. A demo recorded in the dark became the blueprint for an era. The 1970s were something else. Artists made music that didn't fit any box. Labels released it anyway, radio played it, and audiences sang along, sometimes without knowing what they were actually singing. A ruined wedding night, a debut single that opened with a scream, an R&B ballad about oil spills, a number one made alone in a camper van, an Oscar for a role the composer never got, a survival anthem from inside real poverty, a French proposition the lead singer didn't understand, a lullaby on a gravestone, a protest song hijacked as a greed anthem, and a 17-minute demo recorded in the dark that launched an entire genre. These songs weren't weird on purpose. They just made what was true. And truth, it turns out, is always stranger than anything you could plan.
You put me in such a love